Franklin Hayes worked tirelessly to keep BeaconTech spotless, but one day his dedication was met with humiliation. A new manager belittled him, sneering, "No wonder people like you end up cleaning floors." Franklin didn't stay silent. What he did next shook the entire company. Let's start from the beginning. Franklin Hayes had always taken pride in his work. At 52 years old, his routine at BeaconTech's sprawling headquarters was more than just a job. It was a testament to his diligence and integrity. Arriving before dawn each day, Franklin ensured the entire building gleamed with an immaculate brilliance that set the tone for the prestigious tech firm. Every glass pane he polished reflected the skyline perfectly, and every inch of the marble lobby floor sparkled under the lights. His quiet dedication had become an unspoken part of BeaconTech's success. Franklin, with his salt and pepper hair neatly combed and his janitor's uniform always spotless, moved through the building with a calm efficiency. He knew every corner, every corridor, and every scuff mark that needed attention. His hands, calloused from years of hard work, worked the mop handle with practiced ease as he hummed softly to himself. As the sun rose and the early morning light streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Franklin stepped back to admire the lobby's sheen. It was a work of art, his art. But that morning, as Franklin bent to rinse his mop, the sharp clack of expensive leather shoes echoed through the still lobby. Marcus Vance, the newly appointed regional manager, burst into the room. Vance, known for his domineering presence, carried himself like a man who owned every room he entered. His tailored navy suit and silk tie, perfectly knotted, only accentuated his air of superiority. His slicked-back blonde hair gleamed under the lights, and his cold, calculating blue eyes scanned the room for flaws. He found one. "Why is this floor still wet?" Vance barked, his voice slicing through the quiet like a whip. His face, usually a mask of aloof confidence, twisted with irritation. "This is unacceptable for a company of our stature." Franklin straightened up, placing the mop carefully in its bucket. His voice was steady and respectful. "I just finished mopping, sir. It'll dry shortly." But Vance's scowl deepened. He jabbed a manicured finger toward the floor. "Don't give me excuses. If you can't handle basic tasks, maybe you don't belong here." The accusation hung in the air like a thundercloud. Employees walking through the lobby froze mid-step, their eyes darting nervously between Franklin and Vance. No one dared intervene. Franklin's chest tightened, but he refused to let his dignity falter. He met Vance's gaze for a brief moment, then nodded curtly. "Understood, sir." Inside, Franklin's heart burned with humiliation. The sting of Vance's words lingered long after the man had stormed away. He returned to his work, his movements deliberate and methodical, but the moment replayed in his mind over and over. That evening, Franklin drove home in silence, the city lights blurring past his car window. His hands gripped the steering wheel tightly as he recalled the moment. His pride, his professionalism, had been trampled without cause. As he turned onto the quiet street leading to his modest home, his mother's voice echoed in his mind. She had always been his source of strength, her wisdom a guiding light during difficult times. "When injustice knocks, keep records," she had told him once, her voice firm yet gentle. Franklin smiled faintly at the memory of her no-nonsense demeanor. She had been a fighter in her own right, standing tall in the face of countless challenges. It was time for Franklin to follow her advice. No more swallowing his pride in silence. No more allowing men like Vance to demean him without consequence. As he parked in his driveway, Franklin felt a spark of determination ignite within him. This wasn't just about protecting himself. It was about demanding the respect he deserved. The following morning, Franklin arrived at the BeaconTech headquarters earlier than usual. The soft pre-dawn glow lit the building's sleek facade as he parked his modest sedan and stepped into the crisp morning air. Today wasn't just another workday. It was the beginning of a silent battle for dignity and justice. Under his uniform, Franklin clipped a small, discreet body camera to his chest. Its dark plastic casing blended seamlessly with his work shirt, and he had tested it thoroughly the night before to ensure it would capture clear footage. Franklin wasn't interested in revenge. This wasn't about bringing someone down for the sake of it. It was about protecting himself and holding Marcus Vance accountable. He had been underestimated before, but this time he wouldn't let his voice go unheard. As the day unfolded, Franklin moved with his usual precision, meticulously polishing, mopping, and ensuring every corner of the building reflected the professionalism he took pride in. It didn't take long for the storm to arrive. Vance burst into the hallway, where Franklin was polishing the brass railings near the main conference room. His expensive shoes clicked sharply against the tiled floor as he approached, the tension in his body palpable. Without preamble, Vance gestured toward the railing Franklin had just finished. "This," he said, his tone dripping with disdain. "You call this polished? I can still see smudges." Franklin straightened, wiping his hands on the cloth tucked into his waistband. "I'll go over it again, sir," he said, keeping his tone neutral. Vance crossed his arms, his lips curling into a sneer. "I'm running a company here, not a daycare," he spat. "You're supposed to maintain standards, not half-ass your way through tasks. It's no wonder people like you end up cleaning floors." The words landed like a slap. The racial undertone was sharp, cutting deeper than the man's already dismissive attitude. Franklin's fists clenched behind his back, his nails digging into his palms. For a moment, he wanted to speak up, to tell Vance exactly what he thought of him. But Franklin steadied his breathing. The camera was recording everything. That would be his response. "Understood, sir," Franklin said evenly, his voice betraying none of the storm churning within him. "I'll ensure it meets your standards." Vance scoffed, muttering something about basic competence as he strode away, leaving Franklin to resume his work. The day continued in a similar fashion. Every hour seemed to bring a fresh tirade from Vance, mocking Franklin in front of his colleagues, barking orders that contradicted earlier instructions, and threatening to cut his hours if his work didn't improve. "You think this is some union job where you can coast?" Vance sneered at one point. "Not here, Hayes. Shape up, or I'll find someone who can." Each interaction was meticulously captured on Franklin's body camera. By the time his shift ended, the memory card was filled with hours of footage that painted a damning portrait of Vance's behavior. That evening, Franklin sat at his small kitchen table, reviewing the footage on his laptop. The insults, the threats, the condescending tone. It was all there, plain as day. He paused the video during one particularly cruel exchange, Vance's face frozen mid-sneer. Franklin leaned back in his chair, the weight of the day pressing on him. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about ensuring that no one else had to endure this kind of treatment. As the clock ticked toward midnight, Franklin transferred the files to a secure drive. The footage was raw, undeniable proof of discrimination and bullying in the workplace. He realized he had more than enough to expose Marcus Vance for what he was, and to demand the respect he had always deserved. Franklin reached out to his niece, Kayla, a law student passionate about civil rights. She was appalled by the footage. "Uncle Frank, this isn't just workplace bullying. This is systemic racism," she said. Together, they drafted a letter to BeaconTech's HR department, attaching the evidence. Kayla also suggested sharing the footage anonymously online to pressure the company. By morning, the video had gone viral, trending under the hashtag #JusticeForFranklin. Social media exploded with outrage. Former employees shared their stories of Vance's behavior, painting a grim picture of a toxic manager. BeaconTech's PR department scrambled to control the damage. Employees staged a silent protest by wearing black armbands, standing in solidarity with Franklin. Local news outlets picked up the story, turning the janitor's plight into a national conversation about workplace discrimination. By noon, BeaconTech's CEO, Sarah Lee, summoned Vance to an emergency meeting. Armed with the evidence, she grilled him about his conduct. Vance, arrogant as ever, tried to dismiss the footage as out of context. But his excuses fell flat in the face of overwhelming evidence. An hour later, Sarah called Franklin into her office. Her tone was contrite. "Mr. Hayes, on behalf of BeaconTech, I apologize for the treatment you've endured. Mr. Vance has been terminated, effective immediately." She paused, adding, We'd like to offer you a promotion to oversee building operations and ensure a culture of respect among our staff." Franklin, overwhelmed, accepted with grace. That evening, as he walked out of the building, employees applauded him. For the first time in years, he felt seen. Back home, Franklin called Kayla. "We did it," he said. But his niece corrected him gently. "No, Uncle Frank, you did it."